frankly, I mean, you hear the noise. There's a whole lot of people in the progressive movement who have wanted you to leverage your votes. So I think that's a good first step. The question I have is, I've been seeing, Congresswoman Jayapal, chair of the Progressive Change Caucus, uh, Progressive Congressional Caucus, excuse me, Bernie, some others with kind of the same talking points, at least in TV interviews, that we're not going below 3.5 trillion. Whether that's their actual position or not, they've been signaling that. You were on CNN yesterday, basically saying we don't have a red line, meaning we'll go below that.
Are you going to vote no if that House Budget Reconciliation Act, the Build Back Better Act, isn't introduced and doesn't pass first?
I will vote no if we don't have an agreement. What we have said is, let's have an agreement where Senator Sinema, Senator Manchin, the White House, progressives are on the same page, both on the Build Back Better Act and on the Infrastructure Act. I think we can get to an agreement. No one is saying it has to be passed. Every single detail has to be worked out. Let's just have a framework. The House progressives, we have a proposal. We're waiting on a counteroffer.
An agreement that Sinema, Manchin, and the House Democrats unanimously will support the Build Back Better Act, the $3.5 trillion bill.
Right, but we're willing to negotiate.
I don't personally, with all due respect, I think that's pretty bad negotiation tactics. I think why not go with a hard line, vote no, actually turn the pressure on the Manchins, the Sinemas, the Gottheimers in the House. And also, I personally don't understand why the first talking point isn't pointing out that Joe Manchin himself in January said, the most important thing, do infrastructure, spend $2, $3, $4 trillion over a 10-year period on infrastructure. So it seems to me, at least on CNN yesterday, you were basically already signaling that we will go further and further towards the corporatists, when, I mean, all you need to say is we're just doing what Joe Manchin called for in January. I am, maybe some progressives don't agree with this. I'm not naive. You probably will have to go below 3.5 trillion. But I think by signaling it now that you're willing to, don't you think that ends up getting an even more watered down deal?
Well, first of all, I agree with you on the $4 trillion talking point. You don't get all your points in, and that was probably one I should make and will make, and agree with you. We should start out with the fact that this is the president's bill. I don't remember if I said that on the CNN interview or not, but it's actually a compromise below what even President Biden put out. It's a compromise with Senator Warner and the moderates to begin with. We started out at $6 trillion. And it's less than what Joe Manchin had said. And so, if I didn't hit all of those points, I have in other interviews, but I agree with emphasizing that. I also don't speak for the Progressive Caucus. Pramila does, and she will be making with the caucus's recommendations the ultimate decision. But there are those of us who have said what matters is what's in the bill. If you told me they're going to take out the clean energy standard or take out environmental key climate provisions, or they're going to gut key programs. In fact, I said that. What do they want to cut? Then I think you're not going to have the votes there. If it's a matter of, are we going to fund it 5 years or 7 years, and that there is some negotiation, all I said is yes, we're not going to be unwilling to negotiate if we can get things that are going to improve the American people's lives. But I also said that that's probably a matter of weeks. So it's not like we're doing that to try to avoid a vote of no. We've all been pretty clear that we will vote no. But of course we would negotiate. I mean, in terms of if someone said we're going to get childcare, we're going to get free public college, we're going for community college, we're going to get a universal pre-K, and there are robust climate provisions, and you're going to be able to have broadband and all of the good things. Of course, we would be irresponsible not to engage in that kind of conversation. And the reality is, Manchin's in a very different place than Sinema. I mean, Manchin is representing a 30% Republican state. Sinema, you've got Mark Kelly going along with the president's agenda. So I actually think the challenge is going to be convincing Sinema.
So what do you say, and I'm saying it, what do you say to people, including me, that that's a bad strategy? The fact of the matter is, progressives said vote for Biden and we will fight him on day one. That was Bernie's position. Just get rid of Trump. We'll fight him. I mean, it's been pretty much collegial going along with him. In the 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, for example, the only real policy he ran on, Congressman Khanna, was a $15 minimum wage. And he preemptively basically succumbed to an unelected, non-binding advisor saying you can't have it in here. I didn't really see progressives fight on that. Biden ran on a public option for healthcare, which I think we agree is not enough. That's been lost in the Washington vernacular. Now they're talking about, Obamacare subsidies. It seems like you've already compromised, and many would say kind of just folded the tent preemptively. So why should you compromise even beyond? You say, of course, we're going to negotiate, but you've already kind of, I would say, negotiated by forestalling and not really fighting for, big picture policies that forget what you got, what we want, what Biden ran on. So I don't really get why the strategy wouldn't be, and granted, I'm not in DC, maybe I have an outsider's point of view. Why not say, yeah, no, this many people wanted 6 trillion. We've already gone down to 3.5 trillion. Now myself, Senator Sanders, the whole gang is going to West Virginia, is going to Arizona. Instead of trying to negotiate with corporatists, go on these people's front doors and put pressure on them. It seems to me Manchin Cinema, they never actually have pressure on them because the media kind of slobbers over them as centrists. And the progressives, it doesn't really seem there's any rallying the base. I think that's one thing progressives, I don't agree with progressives who have called you all sellouts and all those things, but it doesn't really seem like you're rallying the troops because they would follow you if they see you fighting.
Well, Jordan, let me tell you where I agree and where I disagree. First, I obviously would have liked to see Bernie Sanders to be president. Not everyone probably will know this. Some may, that I was a co-chair of his campaign. I dedicated over a year and a half of my life to try to get him to be president. Would I rather he had been president so we have our agenda? Of course. So we came close. It shows, I think, a progressive can become president. We weren't able to get into the final 10 yards and win it. But I will say that I do think Biden today is very different than the Biden who ran as a candidate. He has adopted a lot of progressive policies. Let me be clear where. First of all, on the CARES Act, the child tax credit was a big deal. It has actually something that Sanders was talking about, making it refundable. It is something that is going to go to families, that's cutting child poverty. We need to make it permanent. That actually was a significant policy issue. $15 minimum wage, I agree with you. I had called and publicly led 23 House members to say that we ought to overrule the parliamentarian. I don't understand this parliamentarian business. No one knows who she is. I don't understand why we care about what she has to say on these issues. The vice president has the authority and the precedent to overturn that. I led a letter pushing for that. I got pushback saying, why are you taking on the administration so early on? We had a press conference with Reverend Barber and the late Richard Trumka on that. And we did actually push and fight for that to the extent we can in Congress. So that was not something where we just gave a pass and said, oh, okay, who cares on the $15 wage? We organized, we pushed, we've continued to push on that. On foreign policy,
But is pushing, writing a letter? I've seen a lot of letters written to Biden, Pelosi. I get you have to be somewhat diplomatic in there, but it doesn't. I see what happened with President Obama, where he created this massive organizing army as a candidate, and then he just didn't tap into it and started basically starting on the Republicans' 50-yard line in negotiations and giving them half the farm right out of the bat. Bernie has a massive army. I think there are tons of progressives who right now feel leaderless. I'm not saying you to go in there, figurative, guns a-blazing, but it just seems to me you're sending letters, making calls for. There's a lot of progressive organizations that didn't exist 5 years ago. Why aren't the tactics a little bit more aggressive and tapping into, an army of activists around the country to challenge the president on not putting the $15 minimum wage in there and several other things?
I'm open to those ideas. We did try to mobilize. We worked with Sarah Jairam, Saru Jairam and One Fair Wage. We tried to work with labor. We tried to work with other organizations in the mobilization with tipped workers, because some tipped workers are only making a little over $2, $2.13. So we did try to mobilize on that. I'm all for ideas on how we can mobilize to get $15 into a must-pass bill. And if there is a mobilization, I agree that that's something we ought to deliver. That's something the president ran on. That's sort of fundamental to improving life for the working class. And when you don't have the ability, forget it, for a one parent income, even two parent income to make ends meet with kids, $15 isn't going to solve that, but it would be a step in a productive direction. So I agree with you that we need to mobilize on that. But my point is, I and others haven't been hesitant to be vocally critical of the administration and not pushing for $15. On foreign policy, I do think that the president showed courage in getting out of Afghanistan. I mean, we can debate the details, but that was I think a lot of progressive mobilization around the country against endless wars that has had an impact. We have made an impact on Yemen. I mean, my amendment just passed again, 219 to 207. We're mobilizing around the country to say, don't strip it out of the NDAA. A lot of Biden administration officials supported that as private citizens. They must support that now. That's the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. And we're mobilizing.
By the way, thank you for leading on that. You've been one of the few leading on that for many years.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's just a humanitarian disaster. And Bernie Sanders said I had passed the War Powers Resolution that's somewhat improved the situation, but still not nearly enough. And the Saudis commit atrocities. On climate, I mean, we are demanding that there be real bold provisions before we vote for anything. And I guess a lot of those provisions are things Bernie ran on. They're not as bold, but they are making it in to the agenda. I mean, the climate stuff, the free public college, the childcare, the universal preschool, the expansion of Medicare benefits. Obviously, if they cut a lot of these things systematically, or they start to make significant cuts, will be a no. But if all we've said is we're a no currently, if you don't have a strong, robust Build Back Better bill, the reconciliation part, we're willing to vote no. So it's not like we're trying to finagle out of a no vote. If the vote came in 1 hour, I'd be a no, and so would 40 or 50 other folks. So unless there's some miraculous proposal in the next 48 hours, that's where we're headed. But we want to continue the conversation, and if we can get substantive parts of the progressive agenda through, we will be a yes, realizing we got to get more progressives elected to the House and to the Senate. In terms of mobilization, I think the mobilization we need is to get more progressives into the House elected and into the Senate elected. I'm not sure mobilizing in Manchin's district, where Trump carried it by 30%, is actually what's going to move him on these policies.
Well, Manchin is, he's all of West Virginia, not a district. And I would remind you, Bernie won every county in West Virginia. So it seems to me, by the polls, the people of West Virginia want the majority of what's in this. I'll also remind you, Joe Manchin didn't win by that much for Senate back in 2018. He narrowly won.